What do you think about the brawl?
The opening brawl.
The
right?
opening brawl.
So you have the regular police officers versus the naval officers.
Yeah.
You have Yunbyo in there, who is, I guess, their commanding officer. And what's going on is they're all supposed to be going out to sea the following day because they're supposed to be battling the pirates. So it's kind of like their last celebration before they go out. And what happens is I guess there's like some misunderstandings. People spill beer on each other. Some guy
I wouldn't say it's
spaghetti.
misunderstanding. I don't think it's misunderstanding. They're just deliberately antagonizing each other.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. And so they fight, and it's funny because this is just a Western bar brawl.
Yeah.
But Jackie Chan is directing a Western bar brawl, and so they're literally in this very, very large tavern. See all the long tables. It's almost like a beer hall. Mm-hmm. And I love the wides because they really show you, okay, this is going to be fucking pandemonium when it starts. And when it starts, you have guys fucking throwing chairs at each other, people all over the place. Choreography wise, it's interesting because it's not what I exactly want it to be, but I think the action direction is still very good because it's so clear.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The amount of times I've said in the show that, this brawl is like, or this fight is like organized chaos. I usually say that about like big group fights, orgy fights. We call them orgy fights. But this is not that. This is not organized chaos. It's just organized. It's a very organized fight. I don't think any of it's very chaotic at all. Like the more I watch it, like frame by frame, I realize how it's so clear down to the minute details about like, hey, you're pay attention to someone in the background. You can tell what he's doing. Like it's not, you're not supposed to pay attention to him, but like, it's not just like blur of people, just kind of like bodies on top of one another. Like even they're having their moments to kind of like just throw, hits at one another that don't feel like I punch you, you punch me, I punch you, you punch me. No one cares because no one's supposed to pay attention to us. Pay attention to the people in the foreground. I was
gonna say. So I was mentioning it earlier. The cameras in this period are very heavy. So if they're gonna move them, they're gonna be deliberate. Yeah. And it's kind of interesting because the setup to the fight is static cam, lots of static cameras building up the tension, cutting back and forth between them. And when the action starts, you might not notice it, but it actually is a little wavy. It's not modern day wavy where the camera is definitely intentionally shaking it, trying to add intensity. But there is this handheld feel to it that definitely livens the frame up a little bit. But you can still see everything within this box that is in front of your eyes. They're not trying to whip pan. He's not trying to obscure things at all. If there's maybe somebody falling to the ground, the camera is going to follow it, but it's going to follow it smoothly. This is the time when camera movements were intentional, deliberate. They had a zoom in or a zoom out to, surprise or to reveal that what camera moves are supposed to be.
Yeah.
And I mean, I sound like an old man, but because I was, raised on traditional filmmaking. So it's lovely to see this sort of direction in an action film, but I know we're not going to really get this anymore.
No, definitely not. I mean, honestly, if you try to show this to a modern filmmaker and say like, this is back in my day, this was considered, expert level shot composition for an action scene. They'd be like, okay, grandpa, I can create everything with AI now.
Well, they're going to take now we're going to really sound like boomers. They're going to take their iPhone. They're going to shake it all around. They're going to start orbiting around a fight scene. What are all the hacky things that happen?
Oh God,
Every punch is going to have a arcing camera move to follow it.
Hey, listen, we love our modern action movie making too, but this is go back, holy crap, 40 some odd years, and you'll see that like this is how how clever and how not even clever. Sorry, clever is the wrong word. How resourceful, we were back then, in terms of like capturing the action. But let me throw a bone to anyone who might, a new or younger audience who might not be in love with this kind of scene, um, or this kind of action direction. So this particular fight, it's got some really good moments for sure. But I actually look at it and I think this is not a martial arts fight. I would never send this clip to someone and be like, "Oh, look at this cool fight scene." It's like it's not that at all. In fact, I'd
Oh,
say it's more of a comedy scene.
yeah. So this is indeed action comedy. And one thing I forgot to mention in the non-Patreon section is when I think of this movie, now that I rewatch it, I think of this more as an action film
Sure.
than a martial arts film because the martial arts is not, I guess, like what I have in mind when I think of like a martial arts movie where it's really sort of traditional hand-to-hand encounters. And here there's just there's like kind of a lot of chaos with the bar brawls, but that's intentional. There's a lot of stunt falls going on a little more.
Hmm.
The exchanges are much smaller until you get to the end where it's okay, Dick Way and the
Yeah.
three of them. That's where it feels like a martial arts movie.
Yeah.
And then when Jackie and Samuel fight later on, that's where it feels like a martial arts movie. But all the other fights don't. But that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they show the final fight. It's more traditional, kung fu fare, but it's the least memorable thing about the movie in my eyes. Actually, so yeah, that's in all fairness to the film. The fact that it is a little bit different and it's a little bit more generic. No, not generic. I won't say generic. It's a little bit more of an action movie than a martial arts movie. That's not a negative about the film. I like this scene because it does those movie sins that I don't love, but for good effect because it is pretty much comedy first. Comedy first is like it's like we're cutting back and forth between Mars and some random guy, and they look like they're about to hit each other over the head with the bottles, but they don't. But then it builds and builds until like actually they do it. It's like, oh, comedy, yeah, whatever. Tybo's
Right. I
trying
mean,
to,
you can see his influences from like older
yeah,
classical comedies, kind of
yeah.
like Stooges or
Oh yeah,
vaudeville type humor.
yeah, yeah,
And that's fine. It's interesting because like for me, when I think of action comedy, I always think of Jackie Chan, and I always think of his influences from more classical comedy. So it's cool to see like, okay, yeah, you can see slapstick. When we
yeah.
when we think of slapstick, we kind of I think of his infusion of what he likes and then how he puts it into his movies.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, there's the violent parts of the comedy where Tybo is trying to hit someone in the face with spaghetti. You're right. I mean, like it should technically be a negative thing, but it's like, well, the intention of the scene is for the comedies. The action's kind of secondary to it, in my opinion. Even Yoon Bu and Jackie going at it, they're just tussling. I mean, there's some nice little moments where like they're being very innovative with like fighting on top of the counter, and they're throwing kicks just barely missing, like perfect like Peking opera
that
style choreography, like
Yeah,
timing and
that
everything.
that's where it starts to feel like, oh, this is going to turn into a fight because they're evading each other now, and we're only spending time with them instead of cutting to the other players. Like, okay, this is a fight scene between these two. Oh, this is great. They're fighting on the table. They're fighting on the bar. Like you said, Jackie Chan is really infusing his dodging, his
Hmm.
evasion of the chair and stuff like that.
Yeah,
And it ends on this great comedic note where they both slam their hands
yeah, yeah,
on the end of the bar, but then that's it. There's
yeah.
the fighting doesn't continue, so we get these short bursts of martial arts, and then it's over.
Yeah,
Unfortunately,
yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say it's over, but it
I mean,
cuts.
like in this moment, like
Yeah, yeah,
the spaghetti in the face on Tybo. That's kind of like the exclamation point. Then you get all the the other police officers with the rattan shields come in, and you're like, okay, sure.
Yeah.
Bar fight's over, pandemonium's finished, and but that's a great opening fight for this movie.
Yeah.
And when I think about this in Jackie Chan's action direction career, it's like the start. Like he's taking like a Western action film, which they're probably a little bit influenced from, like, seeing Western movies, Western bar fights. Like, okay, I'm going to do my take on this. I'm going to infuse it with slapstick comedy. And I don't know any other martial arts comedies that did that before he did. I could be wrong. Maybe others were trying it, but we know Jackie Chan because he just did it so masterfully.
Right. I think it has a lot to do with like Jackie's failed attempts at trying to break into the Western market. I mean, like I think his time with Cannonball Run was a little bit before this. So like, he's got enough exposure from the West now. And I think the whole movie, like the fact the whole fight scene taking place in a bar has a lot to do with that. Yeah, it's mostly comedy first, and I think that's like what like makes this this one fight scene work, in my opinion. It's not great. It's not a perfect example of a good fight scene, but it's funny and it's entertaining. So whatever.
你哋冚唪唥平洲，我哋係賊人。我哋全部都係。